This is the fourth and final video on creating a decisive competitive edge. If you remember, we just came up with our story and gave it the name ESP. Now we need a plan. Plans are more implementable if they come from a cross-functional team. Round up any doubting Thomases, any worriers, and beg them to identify obstacles. This is what our team came up with. I'll give you a second to read it. So the next step is to sequence all these obstacles. Some have to be clear before you can even get to others, but most can be attacked in parallel. And it's a good thing too, because there was so much energy in the room that everybody wanted to contribute and try to knock down some of these obstacles. So we broke up into teams to do it. Here is our plan. We made this map, and as the solutions are implemented, we change the color to show the progress towards completion. Now, so what you'll see here is you'll see standard plan not acceptable. So the step is customize the plan for the customer. That overcomes this orange obstacle. So the orange obstacles are things that are done only if necessary. Green ones you have to do every time we decided, and the blue ones are one-time only things. We do it for the first customer, and after that we can do it again and use it again and again for everybody. Now, this is a prerequisite post it centrally. Reprint it and post it every time some milestone occurs, and celebrate every single victory. When you're finished, it looks like this. All those boxes that were white have now turned blue to mark them as complete. Some are easy to overcome, and some take real thought. Let's cover a difficult one, just one hurdle. So we'll pull this one out. The customer still wants to be able to quote their business. Let's talk about it. We want to win a loyal client. However, after hearing about ESP and liking it, the buyer wants shippers to quote him and to be on the lowest prices before he changes suppliers. Now, there's no rule that he must gather quotes, but he always has before, and he makes the request just out of habit. We counter by saying, under our ESP program, we match your existing prices. That way you get the best service and you pay no more for it. Some buyers see the light and agree. Others will hold their ground and demand a quote. So let's see how we convince the stubborn ones. Remember, in their future reality, they have one problem left, and it's a problem for purchasing. We're going to talk about it now with the buyer and the buyer's boss. And the boss, by the way, is there as a get-out-of-jail-free card for the buyer. Buyers frequently feel like they have to do what they're expected to do, and the boss can release them from that obligation just with a shake of a head. This way, the poor buyer doesn't have to worry about being blamed later. So let's see what we show them. This time we do show the logic, and we show it in full because we have to be sure we clearly articulate this. You can make a video if you like and have the best person to present it make this presentation. You can show them the video and then talk through what was said. So the obvious place to start is that customers want more profits. Nothing wrong with that. And the desire for more profits makes them want the lowest prices, so they send out the RFQs. That's what's happened here. Customers aren't the only ones that like profits. Suppliers want to make money both on products that they sell and on capital equipment. Therefore, the suppliers naturally quote as high as they think they can get away with. Because of the two together, when some quotes are too high, the customer ends up with many suppliers and they switch between them. After all, it's very unlikely that one supplier can sell everything and has the lowest prices on everything. So the consequence is that the customer loses the leverage of the full volume that their buy would bring. And when the quote is low, from experience, customers know that a low price supplier is not always what they want. They look for value too, not just price. They worry that the new supplier will be worse than the one they have now. They could be blamed. If the quote is lower than what they're paying, they often go back to their existing supplier, the devil they know, and ask them to match the price. It isn't really ethical, but it seems easier than the hassle of a transition, and their personal risks are no worse. They try to tell themselves they do it out of loyalty to their current supplier. But if they were so loyal, why did they send out the request to competitors in the first place? The other suppliers that quoted get nothing, and they learn that this won't be an easy customer to win, and they look for easier targets. Demoralizing non-suppliers will be bad in the future, but more dangerous is the fact that their existing supplier has lost interest in them as well, and they may not even know it. Let's switch to the equipment side. One of the best things a supplier can do for a customer is help them find justifications for labor savings or productivity enhancing, even better, equipment. Both stand to gain in the customer far more than usually comes from quoting out already commoditized products. Suppliers know well that the customers want profits, so they get busy trying to make a case for justification. If the justification is good enough, the customer wakes up and takes over. Ironically, because the work of the supplier has provided the opportunity for substantial profits, customers now seek to lower their supplier's margin. Again, just out of habit. So it's sort of like a disincentive, isn't it? The better you do for me, the less I pay you. The request for quote goes out to any company that can provide the equipment. The opportunity to gain is overbalanced by the fear of loss. Sharp pencils come out, and the prices are shaved to the point that the joy of getting the order is largely mitigated, and even that slight relief is only felt by one of the potential suppliers. The customer's priority drops some more. The group of potential suppliers who were asked to quote but who didn't get the business no longer want to help. Worse, the incumbent supplier no longer wants to help either. The whole supplier community is all seeking and working for less thankless customers. It's the customer's own actions that make it harder and harder for them to implement improvements. What can we do about it? Wait, the customer doesn't want to lose. The action of requesting a competitive quotation was meant to improve things, but eventually accomplished the exact opposite. This calls for a different approach. Let's look at our solution that we show them again, step by step, verbatim. So let's think for a second about the context. We were moving along beautifully. We established that they prefer us to all other suppliers. Maybe even their supplier voted that that was true. But when they requested a quote, we stopped the process to protect our margins. From experience, by matching prices, margins end up 1/3 to 2/3 higher, and there's no sense of loss triggered in the customer's minds. We showed that quoting leads to the red box and stopped there. We did not push for a reversal. Instead, we showed how their well-intentioned, for them, win-lose actions resulted in a lose-lose. Now we want to move the buyer's mind away from the impasse. If we can't get ahead, let's make sure future steps seem easier by generating certainty from uncertainty. We have to get them to think through what would happen if they did agree to move ahead. So we switch gears to that. When we shared the logic to help the customer understand that the eventual lose-lose impact of their instinctive inactions, the point was to whet their appetites that just maybe we've got one more rabbit in our magician's hat. Here's where we are. We presented ESP and they loved it. An offer of ESP plus a big guarantee plus their frustration made them interested. We primed the customer. Always do this. We prime the customer who we are otherwise afraid does not always live up to this expectation that they're going to be ethical. It's difficult to be unethical when an attractive partner gives you credit for being ethical. They want ESP, but we have not said yes yet. Now the expert implementation team jumps in to meet with the customer. Nobody who even smells like a salesperson is present. Explain that we will identify the list of potential products instead of expecting the buyer to do it. Our expert team knows better what we can sell than the buyer, and more importantly, we don't want to add work to the buyer, particularly before he makes his decision. Easy supply program, remember? We don't ask for prices, but we do need annual volumes. This is the normal quote package, completely ethical to the incumbent supplier. We ask them to help us plan the transition to make sure that we can do it, and so that they understand how easy it will be. Here are the steps. The implementer and the customer agree on which products should be in the initial ESP list. Second step, we get agreement on all the remaining assumptions necessary to move ahead. Invoices will be sent upon delivery. This keeps the whole accounts payable process normal. Nobody has to learn anything new or do anything special just for shippers. Payment terms are net 30 days. Since we'll save the client so much cash by reducing their inventory, we do ask they pay us before 30 days to stay on the program. Paying a week or two late is a normal way that companies preserve their cash. We expect to reduce inventory by a month or two, so getting paid a week or two in advance is good business for them. Explain to the buyer we'll also have a separate meeting with the client's AP department to make sure that these things are all set up so that the AP department doesn't create any kind of hassle for the buyer. And third, we explain that we usually deliver weekly, but can do it every 2 weeks if the client's further away or whatever works out. Now, fourth, the implementer explains that we cannot be responsible for availability during the transition while we still share the product with another supplier whose the other supplier's shortage could cause us to pay a penalty. Therefore, we must be the exclusive supplier of the products they award to us before making the guarantee. That doesn't say we have to be their exclusive supplier. They can try us on a small scale, but of the products they give us, we're the only supplier for those products. Everything that needs to happen is done or planned. The implementation team goes on to explain what happens next. Remember, we're assuming agreement for the sake of planning. Once the buyer has our process firmly in mind, it's harder for them to deviate from the plan when the time comes to decide. So, following the logic some more, Shippers is now the de facto supplier, even though the implementation hasn't started yet. Since we are the supplier, the client can ethically discuss pricing with us. We explain that we don't want them to pick us on price. We want win-win partners. So Shippers matches prices. The client gets ESP benefits, all for free. And free is an important word here. Don't forget to use it, and use it over and over again. Let's scoot this over. Direct product matchups result in the incumbent supplier being notified that they're being replaced and asked how much inventory they need used up. If it seems like a trivial amount to the client, they may just buy it all. Otherwise, Shippers manages the drawdown and the subsequent conversion. Other products may need to be trialed. When acceptable replacements are found and approved, then the same actions happen. We've learned to avoid these conversions up front to simplify and speed up the transition process. Better to get a shorter list of products implemented and they're on ESP and then come back and pick up the leftovers later. A Shippers employee is dedicated to completing the transition quickly and perfectly. Once they're up and running and we've closed all questions, our top application experts are available to come in and look for value projects. Since Shippers drives the projects, they get implemented quickly, and this can't be the only source of profits for the client. No shortages allow better service to the client's customers. Cash, which was previously invested in inventory, comes back into the checkbook. All client intimate policies make their own contributions. The buyer's job gets easier the more Shippers handles. They can invest the peace dividend, including not seeing any more salespeople, to make other improvements they never had time for before. The client is in an unbelievably good place. Everything is exactly as promised. We make sure to communicate the outcomes across all stakeholders to make sure everybody is aware and talking between themselves. The client has massive wins and more coming all the time. Free. we predict they might feel guilty. How do we help them with this? Ask them to help us get more profits, but not from themselves, from other customers. Win-win. In order of value to us, the top 3 things they can do are in-person referrals. That means getting in the car and driving to our customer site and sitting and telling them how great we are. Telephone referrals, same thing but by telephone. Video testimonials, which we can then use on our website or send out by email or something like that to people. Clients will be happy to pay a little more for such a great service. There's no point in pointing it out to them, though. If you do, it'll just make them feel worse. Wait for decreases and don't pass them all on, or increases and pass on a little extra. Be patient, and whatever you do, don't allow the overall premium that they end up paying for ESP grow to more than 3% at the absolute tops, 3% of sales. If they see quotes from somebody else that are 1 or 2% less, but they get ESP from you, and now you're not the devil they know, but rather the angel that they know, I think they'll stick. I think they'll stick around and not leave for such a small price savings. So this really soups up the marketing machine for ESP. Most of the time, it's not necessary to go to all the trouble that I just showed you of a whole transition tree. But when they are necessary, both the customer and the supplier benefit from the full articulation. The supplier, the customer because he never knew, and the supplier because they forget. Too often we feel like we sort of get it and we leave the important things unsaid. Shippers has found that periodic, in-depth reviews internally and with clients are imperative. Otherwise, the DCE begins to collapse. People naturally get lazy. Laziness leads to sloppiness. Sloppiness leads to fewer benefits. Fewer benefits leads to less positive outcomes. And less positive outcomes lead to doubt in a great program. Keep teaching and reviewing to keep it together. Otherwise, time will kill it like it does everything else. Building a decisive competitive edge is hard work. But ESP is worth more than 1,000 times the effort that went into creating it. Good luck on making your own. That's the end.